board meeting, and it's January the 24th of 2024. And do we have any changes, additions, or any other information that needs to go before us for the agenda?
I would like to ask the board to table the school calendar discussion. I became aware of a couple edits that need to be made before I present it to you. Sorry about that.
Are there any other changes or additions?
No?
Do I have a motion to approve?
I move that we approve the agenda as amended.
Second. Okay.
I'd like to move that the board find that there is a need for an executive session to discuss the grievance and pursuant to 1 V.S.A. 313A1D and 313A, no, I'll repeat it twice for some reason, and that we choose to go into said executive session.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Oh.
Aye.
Oh.
Aye.
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 All right.
Okay.
However, you could also choose to go into executive session under section 313 of Title 16, section A7, which is the ground for going into executive session where there would be a discussion of records of a student. And as I understand this grievance, there may be references to particular student records, even though their names may not be mentioned, they might be identifiable. And so there would be a ground to preserve their confidentiality to go into executive session under A7.
All right.
Would you like to amend that?
I would like to amend my
earlier motion to include the necessary language provided by our attorney.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All approved?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, sure.
Might want to adjust your camera. We're getting a very good view of the top of your head.
Sorry, I was writing.
All right, Coach, you in charge or am I?
Why don't you go ahead?
Just a second, we can't hear you yet.
Nancy, go ahead,
I
please.
can't hear you.
Yeah, we're just waiting for it. We're working on it this end.
You're in charge, Nancy. I so moved.
Coach is not doing very well at all. Well, welcome to the Hartford School Board meeting of January the 24th, 2024. We have come back out of executive session.
And we have reached a ruling which will be shared in a written document there.
So we should go to governance policy process. The second read of the gender inclusivity policy.
So we have been working on this for a very long time, as was discussed last time we did this. This is the second chance for you to review it, ask questions, and hopefully approve it. Nobody has come up with any suggested edits or anything else. So I will call it. Please
Go ahead.
So I would like to move that we approve the gender inclusivity policy.
I'll second that.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All against? Okay, passes
Thank you.
unanimously.
Good
This-
news.
All right, about districts, facilities, bond review and discussion.
Okay. We wanted to have Jonathan do a run through of the scope of the bond and just for all the public to hear once again. He wasn't able to make it to the informational meeting and Sarah did a great job. But we wanted Jonathan to give us a little more detail. I know there's some questions in the public.
So the first time we discussed this here was kind of very high level philosophical, what we have to deal with. The idea of moving towards a much more proactive and kind of meta organized process, acknowledging the condition of facilities, and kind of talking about the balance between responsible stewardship and aspirational thinking for what the school would be. The last time I was here, we got a little bit deeper and talked about the different components of how a bond would be used, basically breaking it out as very large brushstrokes as kind of a planning piece, and then the maintenance upgrades piece, and then the development piece. And the planning is what it sounds like. It's exactly that. It's the things we have to consider. And I won't go into all those details, but related to demographic changes and student enrollment changes, facilities conditions. The maintenance and improvement piece is, again, pretty self-explanatory. There's stuff we need to maintain full buildings. There are improvements we have to make because of regulatory issues, just because of use of facilities. And then the development piece really should be where those things are integrated, where we get the community feedback from educators, that who uses the facilities, we look at what we have to do, we look at what we want to do, and then kind of work backwards into the planning piece. So I thought tonight I would kind of try to give a couple of examples of how that integration works. Those components, again, planning is a community involvement piece because we need to know what people want. There's kind of the long range, this is the properties we have, this is the space we have, this is what we anticipate will be needed. For that effort, we really need some subject area experts to do what we can't do. I think we all know that there's going to be a lot of construction and new housing in the community, but none of us at the table are really qualified to do an analysis of what that means in terms of demographics. Who's going to move into those houses? What's the likely impact on student enrollment? So we need some help there. Similarly, very selfishly, in engineering, there are big problems to solve that we won't solve right unless we get the right minds working on it. So that's a piece of the planning component that's supported by this bond. Maintenance and upgrades, specifically, we have some regulatory issues. The high school needs a new fire alarm system. There's just no question. We are fortunate, we have a very good relationship with the state and local authorities. We're working through them, everything functions, everything's tested, but it needs to be fixed. So how that piece fits in the big picture is, to me, that's just a straight up maintenance and upgrade. That would happen no matter what else we were doing. But when we roll that into the planning piece and the development piece, what it means is we have an opportunity to think about the use of that space, because frankly, when the building is fully sprinkled, the use of the space changes, the allowable use changes, the occupancy, the allowable occupancy of spaces and rooms changes. So rather than just going in and saying, all right, we can, do the sprinkler system and be done, as we work through that, we want to make sure that we're looking at the spaces and how they're handled, so that if we are way down the road thinking about an upgrade to the theater or the gym or the lab or whatever, we're thinking about that in terms of what it will be when we are fully sprinkled and have those different occupancy allowances. Similarly, when we talk about, one of my favorites, the concrete stairs on the north side of the tech that are just, they won't be there. And that's just, some combination of geometry and geology. And they need to be torn off. Now, when I started looking into that, my first impulse was it's a waterproofing problem. Then we looked at it, so we have a structural problem. Then we looked at it, so we have a stormwater problem. And so it really can't be looked at as just fixing the stairs. It has to be looked at as in 1970-ish, when it was built, right? The original thinking was students would get off the buses down in the lower parking lot and walk up those stairs to the tech, so the buses would go from there. I don't think that ever happened. I don't think it ever will happen. So I'm not going to replace some time based on a premise that somebody came up with in 1970 that never happened. So that's one of those situations. It seems really obvious, that thinking that we're not going to just fix those stairs because we don't need them to do what they're intended to do, so we're not going to spend the money to do that. At the same time, when we look at stormwater, getting the stormwater away from that side of the building and out to wherever it needs to go, I'm not going to restripe the parking lot this year if we're going to tear it up next year. So all of these things kind of have to be considered simultaneously. And the trick here is to weight the planning piece appropriately, the maintenance and upgrade piece appropriately, and not lose track of those aspirational development ideas, so that what we end up with is not just a new set of stairs, but some aspect of that building that maybe serves some purpose we haven't discovered yet, but we get to through this process. That's really where those things move from the nuts and bolts of, we need a new roof, we need to figure out the engineering for a new roof structure to support a new roof, which is very kind of dry and boring, to, okay, if we're going to do that, we should look at the ventilation system, because that probably caused some of the roofing problems. And when we look at ventilation, we should look at, what's the population of that school going to be in 10 years? So we design a ventilation system that suits that need. So I guess the point I would make tonight with these examples is, well, we have these components, and it's easy for me to sit and kind of call them out individually. It's a very comprehensive process, and they really can't be taken individually. And the reason the bond has the components it does, the dollars for planning, the dollars for engineering, and the subject area expertise that we need to buy if we don't have it. The reason it has that kind of folded in with some very nuts and bolts, pavement and painting and all that stuff, is because you really shouldn't do one without the other, without being informed in both directions. And if the goal, and I think my understanding of everyone's goal, is to have, in terms of development of facilities, to really think in aspirational terms about community use and program development and the growth of the community, that can only be served, that aspirational development idea can only be served appropriately if we're really comprehensive on planning and execution. So that's why the bond is so broad brush. I hope that helps understand why there's all these line items. The individual line items are kind of dry, but the big picture is actually kind of exciting. So the only other two things I'd add is my perennial pitch I will always make about, you know, we're going to get through this process and we're going to end up with something better than what we have. And I think I would, you know, I'm always going to try to make people be mindful of, you can't buy a new car and not change the oil. You need to, you know, fund and maintain and keep on top of what we have and not let it degrade. And then the last piece that Tom just posted today, right? He did post it. There's a email address, just bondquestions@hartfordschools.net. So if people have questions, specific questions, and want to say, on this line item, this number doesn't make sense to me for this reason, I'm happy to field those questions. My hope is that there's a lot of similar questions I can answer once. Well, that's usually how it works out. People pick up on the same things, you know. But I would like, you know, it's easy to stand here and talk in very broad terms, but if anybody has questions that are specific, that you know, maybe feel more specific mention to respond to those.
Do you have any questions?
I have no questions. I have a comment, which is that if we are going to encumber the citizens of this town into the future, we ought to take into account the future uses that those citizens are going to make of what we're buying on their behalf.
Yeah.
So it makes sense to me.
Just from a professional perspective, I just want to make sure I'm reiterating that we are using the right types of professionals who can show us other options, right? Like we, you know, is it K3? Is it like show us all of the different ways districts can be organized because we have this growth demographic and because we have these aging buildings. Like, what are our choices? And for me, that's what's really important about getting an outside perspective.
And I just bring up that by the end of the week, Tom will have come up with 5 dates between now and town meeting, so that if people have questions, myself and any of my colleagues who would like to join me, along with Tom, are there to answer your questions. Because trying to do it in detail, it's not easy here.
You've been here longer than you've already been here.
One question is, I think you have some members of the public here tonight specific to this topic.
Okay,
I don't know if you want to do that now or wait till
Sure.
later. And
Let's do it now, I think.
I agree. On topic would be happy for me.
Tim,
Good evening, Tim Ferrier, Waver Junction. I want to start off by saying I think probably everything on that list of the 21 million you need as a district. Where I'm really wrestling and struggling with this is just sort of like this concept of kind of the order of things. And what I kind of mean by that is using your tech center example. And again, great work, great thoughts, great details, probably some of the best detailed work that we've had in a while, right? But where I'm struggling is the idea of like what you do first, because the tech center as an example, I'm of the belief that this town and school district would benefit tremendously by a brand new tech center. So the question is, do we have the stomach and the capacity to build it and create it? I think so. But why would you necessarily even think about the stairs or the circulation or all the other kind of challenges of the existing situation without sort of having that vision of like, well, you know, it's kind of, I mean, the best metaphor I have is like the car thing. Like if I have a car, I'm not going to, you know, put a new radio in it and fix the carpet if I'm going to trade it in and get something better. All these things are things that, yes, we have to do them, right? They probably do need to be done because of code or meeting a, you know, a growth goal or whatever. But I just continue to come back to this concept of like $21 million without the at least to begin touching on some of the things you guys have talked about that, you know, again, I was on a committee that wrestled with this. You know, what happens to Ottaquechee? What happens to White River School? What happens to Dothan Brook? How does the middle school fit into that? Does the middle school chimney even need to be redone if we're gonna do a new heat plant? So all these questions and thoughts, like, it just seems kind of weird to me to like say, yep, we're gonna do all these sort of things, and then we'll start thinking about what we're gonna do next. There's something about it that I'm missing, and again, I am in no way bragging, but I've done multi-million-dollar projects in the Upper Valley. I get the process, I get the idea of like the study, getting it done, what it costs. The cost today blow my mind. I just did a $90,000 roof on a building that was bought for $1.2 million. And I'm like, that was 10% of the building for just the roof. I get it. But what I'm really struggling with is you're presenting to voters this kind of like full menu of things you need to do, while also saying that, oh, well, we need to do a study about where we're going. I'm like, well, wait a minute, like, if we're really going to be going in a different place, if we're really going to be really thinking about perhaps a different high school or a new configuration around grades, why are we trying to take it all on? Why aren't we doing that front end essential emergency code work with the study? Maybe it's 7 million, it's some other number, it's not 21 million. And then at a phase 2, when hopefully bond rates are more attractive and the town has a palette for this kind of money, we go to that next phase. And we might need more, right? This town might need 50 million or 60 million to really get us to those objectives. But I just feel like we're again, I embrace all this work, but I just feel like we should maybe scale it or phase it so that it makes more sense. Thank you.
Yeah. You want to answer that?
I can speak to it, I'm not trying. There's some logic there. A couple of points I would make, not in any way disagreeing with the concept, but there are some things that we just must do, right? Agreed. So hanging onto the stairs again, that's just an easy one, it's big. We can't not do anything because frankly, it's not safe and it's allowing water to get in the building. So we have to stop that. If in 15 years or 20 years, there's an appetite to build a new technical center, or 10 years even, the stormwater situation for the high school is still going to be a thing. So my take on it is, or my approach to this is, let's look at the things that we absolutely must do, right? And let's involve the right professionals so that we know what the options are. And as we work through that process, we keep in mind this aspirational thinking. That's where community do it. So that if we get to a point, if we get to the tipping point, I mean, these projects aren't going to happen 6 months. You know, this is an 18-month, 24-month thing. So I think part of my job is, my obligation is to be mindful of safety considerations, code requirements, make sure we're doing the stuff we just must do to keep everybody safe and keep us all doing business. At the same time, get the right input to really understand the cost and implications so that when we get to that tipping point, we don't just fall into it. We say, wait a minute, you know, is it $90 million or $90,000 roof on $1 million building the right thing to do? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. So there's some points of questioning and consideration along the way. You know, if I say we need to replace those concrete steps, that's just true. Do they need to be replaced in kind? Absolutely not. Could the process of looking at the engineering of the stormwater system bring up issues I don't know about? Absolutely. That's been my experience today. It happens.
Don't talk about the cat.
Unknown building conditions.
No, but what I'm saying is, I think you make a valid point that we need to keep the big aspirational picture in mind. And I would just respond to that, not by disagreeing, but by saying, I think that is baked into the process. I think, you know, if we do this correctly, there's a tipping point where I'm not going to say, well, those stairs to do what we think we should do are going to cost 3 times what we thought. Let's, you know, I'm not going to let anything explode. We're going to have a moment of consideration, right? And that's where we come back and say, wait a minute, is this the time when we pause and do we do something different? it's not dissimilar to the point about sprinklers. We must put sprinklers in, right? We have to. When Nelson is thinking about how spaces in the high school get used, he needs to understand that when, what's the classroom right off the main entryway? The big classroom right there. It doesn't have any sprinklers in it. If it has sprinklers, we could put a third more students in there safely. We're gonna put sprinklers in anyway, but we need to think about the implications of that. It's kind of the same thing in microcosm. So I wouldn't want people to think that once we go, like I'm pulling this pendulum back and letting it go, we're just gonna knock stuff down and proceed. There has to be some consideration points in the process. And I think that's where, you know, those kind of three components, very careful, informed planning and executing the work in a thoughtful way and not losing track of those big aspirational opportunities. You know, if I could wave a magic wand, I'd put in a heating plant that took care of the whole footprint. The technology for that is probably gonna you know, I won't be around to see it. So, you know, there's stuff that we will do because, yeah, there might be something better in 25 years, but frankly, what we build is gonna have a 20-year lifespan. If that helps to understand that is a consideration.
And as you had told us before, health and safety issues are one of the things that are at the top of the priority. I mean, there's absolutely, as you said, there's some things that we absolutely have to have done, and we have no choice. I mean, the state has come in, the fire marshal has come in, everybody's come in and said, all right, you've got to do ABC here, and if you don't, we'll close the doors. So, and that's what we looked at. No, it's not gonna happen. I know it's not going to, because we're gonna take care of it first.
If I can speak to, I think, Tim, you and I agree. Like, I think we're on the same page. So my background is project management, so I have a very similar perspective as you. A thing we say at work all the time is, why do it right when you can do it twice? And one of the things that I spend a lot of time in my personal experience doing is trying to think through, how do we not do this twice? You know, what are the thoughtful steps to make? So if it's to our advantage to put that chimney off 3 years because we haven't fully gotten a report from this study that we really do, we're going to start with this study. It is going to be first, but there are also some life safety things that have to run in parallel with that. So I hear you and I get it. And I also think that we have the advantage of, if we do the lump sum, being able to use that money, big bucket 24, almost nothing in 25 because we're planning and doing this, and then another big bucket. Like, it gives the district the flexibility to really react to those studies that I don't think we would have if we were saying we're doing 1 and then 2 and then 3 and then 4. So that's just my perspective.
What's the downside of doing 10 million instead of 21 million? I'm not getting that. I mean, again, like, I'll just tell you, you know, and I don't know how the community will think about this and put faith in you and go forward or what. I hope they do, but maybe they. But you know, I was a track athlete, and I was passionate about Hartford track, and we had a bond floated in the town and a commitment to, this is what we're going to create. Didn't work out that way for a number of reasons: poor studies, bad execution, whatever you want to say. And so we, you know, I think a lot of people felt slighted, right? Because they didn't get what was promised. So you guys are giving this, you know, pretty exhaustive laundry list of what you intend to do. And I just am concerned that, you know, we kind of get down the road and things do change. Things get more expensive. Studies reveal phenomenal, like, you know, environmental cleanup or asbestos or whatever. I've done those projects. So it's kind of like, well, why aren't we calibrating this a little lower? Because it's kind of like the aspirational piece, which I love. I really believe that Hartford can be in a dramatically different place in a shorter time frame, actually. I think within 10, 15 years, we could be a rock star in terms of facilities and what we have. And we have the capacity. But it just seems like on this component that I don't see the downside into saying, let's do some of this stuff that we have to do, as you mentioned. Let's get these studies in place and really get a sense of where we're going, and then float another bond. 10 million now, 11 million the next time. I hope it's 20 million or 30 million if that's what we need. Because I really believe that we should bond for more. We're gonna need more money.
Yeah, and that was part of our discussions was, is this 5 years worth of work before we would have to go back to the voters? And one of the reasons why we thought that we would go for the bigger number is to not go back every 2 years. Like, at what point is that just exhausted, where we could actually like get some longevity and some like momentum behind the work with a 5-year gap. And so at least for me, and I don't know how Doug feels, was my impetus for doing the larger number.
That's a good thing.
I agree.
I just didn't want to speak for you.
Totally agree.
Any other?
Jim, I appreciate your faith in the future of this town.
Does anyone have any other questions about the bond issue? Or comments? Okay. Shall we go to the fiscal year 25 budget?
Sure.
Sure. Okay, deep breath.
Everyone's there for the section.
Just switch documents here. There's a couple things in with this. No, that.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan.
So in order to get the budget to where the board wanted it to be, we needed, or there was a directive for me to reduce the budget by 1.25 million. So I proposed, Jake and I have discussed, let me just make sure I get this up there. Where's my share? Couple things, you know, there was a lot of adds already to the budget. We added about $6 million to last year's, over last year's budget. We were able to add quite a few positions, the ESSER funded positions for counselors and a lot of different staff. And then in the new ads, what we couldn't do was add another high school administrator. One of the things we want to do, we still are committed to, is separating the athletic director from the assistant principal for a lot of reasons, but we wanted to create a position, director of athletics and extracurricular activities 7 through 12, to sort of shore up what that position does and not be split between building responsibilities and after school responsibilities. One of the things that we know really helps kids and keeps them engaged in school is those extracurriculars. We really want to be strong and support those activities. As well as we feel like we need three administrators or 3 leaders in the high school. It's big enough, it's growing. We get a lot of kids and a lot of different programs to supervise. So we don't think we're able to fund that with new money next year, but what I've asked the principal and administration there is to see what they can come up with from existing positions, existing budget items to support the new administrator position. One of the things we had added too, well, we added several positions at the middle school to address some of the concerns. One that we funded actually this year, and we want to fund next year, and it wasn't a cut, is the dean of students. But one of the things that was asked for that we are not going to be able to fund for next year is a flexible pathways teacher and a behavior support, another behavior support para. We have one, we have the dean of students, so we're feeling like that is sufficient right now. And into the future. Another item that was asked for was taking the assistant director of special ed out of the IDEA grant, which is a federal grant we get every year to support special ed and put it into local, which frees up money in the grant for them to use for other things. Great idea that I support, but given the number of cuts we wanted to make, hold off on that for a year.
Just to clarify, it doesn't eliminate the position, it's just where it's.
Right, it doesn't
Perfect.
eliminate the
Yep.
position, it's just not pushed into local
Yep.
funds, stays in federal funds for another year. Mr. Garthwaite asked for 5 additional custodians for next year, given the reduction or the elimination of contracted service. We did cut that back to 4 additional custodians. So provided we can find them, we will be looking for 4 additional positions in addition to the ones we added this year for the buildings that don't use contracted service this year. So next year we will be completely done with assets. And then specific repairs, because of the bond and because of our reserve accounts, we reduced specific repairs by $715,000. So all in all, we were able to come up with 1.267 651 of cuts. And you bring the budget in alignment with where you want it to be under the 5% cap and the 10% per pupil spending. So that's what we did. There may be other ideas that the board has or someone else. Jake, do you have any comment on what I just went through?
That covers everything. The only thing I'll just chime in on is, we had set the capital reserve funds aside for the roofs at Oculus and VBS. And obviously, now that those are included in the bond, I'm recommending that we tap those reserves to basically pay for the interest for next year. So there'll be still some left over from the capital reserve too. We use capital reserve 1 first, and have a little bit of capital reserve 2. Yes.
I just want to confirm, we had come up with the $1.25 million based on the assumption that would get our increased spending per pupil to approximately 9%.
It's 8.97%.
Okay, I just wanted to keep sure that that still has not changed or anything.
And if you're wondering, the cut is a little bit more, but I mean, I've added that back into the budget, so that does not change your warrant number by any means. So.
Any questions, any comments?
I would like to move that we approve the budget as presented.
You want the number?
Tom will give the exact number as required for the warrant. You got that there?
I do. $52,431,376.
I'll second that.
We present that number to the town on voting day.
Correct.
Here we have a motion, we have a second, all in favor? Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Coach on?
Coach?
Yes. I was the second
Oh, well,
as
you
well.
can see that, but that's the number. A little faint.
For the ones of you in the audience, Coach is out ill.
Related to that, I believe we need a motion around the bond. Move that we approve bringing a bond to the town. And there's the actual 20,000, 20 million, whatever number. It will be
21.
21,
$20,817,875.
I thought we just bumped it up to 21.
Not for the actual.
Not for the
vote,
actual,
so-
okay, all right, okay.
and that we present that to the town on voting day.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Passes. Thank you very much.
If you could do the charter changes before the meeting warnings,
Okay.
I just feel like you need to consider those before we do the warnings, which include the charter changes.
Okey-dokey. Who wants to grab that?
All right. As almost everybody, I am sure, is very well aware, there has been a great deal of controversy over the charter changes presented by the charter committee and then eventually moved forward by the town. The town came to us to talk about the charter, and we explained to them at that time that given the separation between the town and the school district, we only really wanted to know about the issues that affect the school district, because we're not allowed to talk about what the town is doing. Based on that discussion, we presented a couple of objections to proposed changes because they did actually have an impact, sometimes more hypothetical than real, but potential, on the school district. Based on that feedback, the town has gone back and amended the charter, and the portions of the charter relating to the school are now acceptable to the board. We're not weighing in on the other issues involved in the charter because, put it smoothly, they're not our business, they're the town's business. So,
Should we draw attention to those just for clarity's sake?
Sure.
so
Sure, for just the way I understand it, it's the town treasurer
yes,
piece because we share that position with the town.
and right, basically, in this case, that the town treasurer is allowed to choose an assistant who will take over in the absence of the treasurer. And that appointment is subject to review and approval by the town manager and now the superintendent.
And then the rights and privileges we requested were put back into the charter, based on the fact that if your position was eliminated, you could continue to serve that position until the changes are in effect. So there's no like, this happened on town meeting day and your position doesn't exist anymore, so go away.
So until you get elected in school board member, they decide they're going down to 7 or to 3. I don't immediately disappear in a puff of smoke. You gotta wait until my term ends and then we go forward. Yes, sir.
That's correct.
I had the perhaps privilege of being part of the original charter created in this town. I don't want to go over all the details because there was many aspects of it that were exceedingly unpleasant. The component, the impetus, if you will, of the charter really was twofold. One was that all of us were exceedingly discouraged on the participation level of our town at town meeting. So it could be argued of a town of 10,000 people, when you have a town meeting and 150 people show up and can click through a $30 million budget. There was some frustration with that, in addition to just wanting people to be more engaged. And I think in general, some of the new redesign has been positive for our community. However, the other component, which was sort of the nasty component, I would call it, was that school budgets were kind of like going haywire. They were just getting clicked through. These liberals are spending all of our money on public education. We don't get any chance to vote on it. And I laugh about it now, but I have to tell you, I was at a committee in Montpelier, and it felt like some type of mafia thug operation, in the sense that I was on the school board at the time, and we had reservations about their charter and what it would have, the impact it would have on the school. And I think it still has an impact on the school. And I think you should be careful creating these silos of school and town, when in fact, many of the components of the charter do in fact impact the school, and vice versa. So I think that there really should be a conversation, because there's some very pertinent topics that are covered in the charter around committees, around participation, around process, that we have to work on as a community at large. So please stay engaged and involved in the charter. I personally am against the current presentation for a number of reasons. FX touched on some of this last night, that this committee, which worked for months and months on the charter and was effectively gutted for various reasons, I think is flawed. I think we blew the process, and we should do better work as a community. So I appreciate what you said, Peter, but I don't think it's accurate in the sense of the point of origin of the charter and the spirit of a community working on issues together that are very important for all of us. So thank you.
Thank you, Kim.
You have a hand raised.
I didn't realize.
There's Heidi Dudo was
Oh.
wanting to speak, and we wanted to know it now or wait till public comment.
It's on the charter.
I think that's appropriate if you wish.
I do too,
Yeah.
yeah, I think so.
Let Heidi.
Good evening, Heidi Dew to White River Junction, Vermont. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I actually was.
We heard Kevin earlier.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we did.
I can hear her on this end. I'm not sure if you guys can.
Can you guys hear me in the room?
While he does that, can I ask a procedural question? So I'm not from a charter type background, so I don't know a lot about how it works. I will admit my ignorance. Is
Can you hear
the
me?
school board saying we are okay with the town proceeding on this so that it then goes to the voters, what we're being asked to do? Or are we being asked to like substantively say we don't agree? Like, I don't know what our powers are at this point.
I believe, I'm presenting the appropriate response for the school board, despite its comments, which I think are quite genuine and reflective of, I expect, the original intent, is that the town and the school board are separate organizations, have separate spheres of issues and problems and scope. And it is appropriate for us to comment on those changes proposed to the charter which directly affect us. And those items that we had come to question have been modified. So with respect to the portions of it that reflect on school, we're okay with what they're proposing. We are not coming out
Stamping the whole charter.
the whole charter, pro or against it either. We're just saying, for those parts of it that are relevant to us, we're accepting that those are reasonable things to present to the town.
Okay.
For voting on.
Peter, well said.
I didn't want to vote if I didn't understand what I was
Right.
doing.
Have we got Heidi yet?
I think she needs to be upgraded to panelist to speak.
By the way, I guess I could take the opportunity to talk to an issue that sort of has accidentally strayed over the line. So there has been some discussion of the 1% local option tax being used in part to pay for school expenses. I have not done the legal research on that, but I suspect that we would not in fact be allowed to do that. The entire premise of the Vermont educational funding process is an attempt to disconnect the linkage between what we spend on our schools and how much we can raise locally. Another way of putting it is they did not want to continue the problem where very wealthy school districts like Woodstock or Burlington could have very nice school districts with well-prepared buildings and everything. And districts that had very little money had districts in disrepair and no infrastructure. So they deliberately set it up so that you had to go through the process. If we were able to avoid that entire process by just creating our own little side tax that we do to get our schools improved, while it might be very pleasant from those standpoint of those on the board, it would circumvent the entire process and reasoning behind the current educational funding process. And no matter what you think about the details of how that process works, I don't think that's a road we want to go down. So. You've been able to get her on?
I asked to unmute, haven't gotten an unmute yet. There's also Michelle Valesky after Heidi.
Are we able to hit them?
If we can get maybe Michelle, well, Heidi is working on unmuting. That's okay with you, madam?
Absolutely.
Test.
Can you hear me now?
Definitely was working.
Hello?
I can hear Heidi, I can hear you, but I'm not sure they can.
Can they hear you?
I think an issue of town charter ought to be getting the
Coach, can they hear you?
television system in here working.
Let's try to find out, because it sounds like it's not.
Dramatically improve our technology delivery.
I agree.
It's been pretty painful.
Yeah.
I know you are, yeah.
Let me see if I can get to that videographer.
So again, my question now is, because we cannot get the public through.
Do we have a problem?
We have to, yeah, we have to call the meeting.
They may well have to.
Tim?
Can you hear me?
Use this gap for one more comment and then comments will go away, or do you want to?
Nope.
So we're facing a problem.
So we've
The
lost.
problem is that under Vermont's public records law, open meeting law, if we tell the public a certain means, and then they can't, we have to stop the meeting because we're in violation of our promise that they can interact with us. Which is a incredibly frustrating place to be.
Yeah.
Does the town is running this same problem,
Yes.
and they have not done that.
We know, sorry.
We acknowledge that technology is fault.
We've already talked with Secretary of State about it. No. Asking questions on how we should do it. You have to make sure we're doing it correctly.
See if you can fix it.
Yes, Coach.
Peter, Heidi, I can hear her, and I can hear, folks that have been upgraded to panelists. There's something, like
Yes, why
really
don't we call?
messed up
Great.
with
Okay.
them, because you're not hearing me,
Thank you,
No,
Tim.
we're not hearing you, and we're not hearing.
Heidi.
Yeah.
And they upgraded Heidi to panelist too.
Right.
So
Oh, six,
the thing is,
oh,
there's
4.
something going on with the Zoom piece. It worked fine when we did our the meeting at the superintendent's office.
I think we need to fix it.
Okay, let me go off speaker here. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Through the system?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so Heidi, can try speaking again, Heidi, if you're still there.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yay.
Okay. It's been corrected. Thank you.
We're gonna cut our break short now.
Because I got my water.
Because you got your water.
Because I got my
Yes.
water.
Okay, who are we gonna?
So
get?
Heidi's
Heidi
live
first.
now.
Yeah.
Heidi, are you there?
I am Nancy.
Okay, we can hear you. Go.
Okay.
Good evening. Heidi Duta, White River Junction, Vermont. Thank you for allowing me to speak through all this interesting evening that we're having here. I have a couple of questions. I understand that you reduced the school budget. Thank you very much for the consideration. I attended the information meeting and I was actually shocked when another resident said that there was an article in the Valley News with school budget and the proposed bond and how it would affect the residents of Hartford with a $300,000 home, with it costing approximately $2,600 in increased taxes. Has anyone run the figures and what it might cost us now?
So Jacob.
Wait,
Jacob's left.
can we speak to the difference between the two things?
Yeah.
Because that's what, so, hi Heidi, it's Sarah.
Hi, Sarah.
So the property tax increase is directly related to the state funding model and our CLA. And so that is a separate issue from where the bond request, and that bond does have a budget implications in future years, but those bond payments will be part of whatever future budgets we build. So yes, it is scary that property taxes would go up $2,400, but that is not in relationship to the bond question. It's completely around the situation that the state is in on property taxes and our town's lack of a recent valuation.
No, I understand that.
Okay.
My other question is with this bond, and I know this is a very touchy subject. With the water testing that needed to be done in the beginning of January, should we be looking at a larger bond? Will we be needing to replumb the middle school due to the lead water pipes?
We're still investigating that, Heidi. So the state is working on that with us, with the high school and the middle school, around what exactly the problem is. We keep getting different results.
Okay.
That's to be determined.
So have the results from the last test, the fourth quarter testing, been published?
I know we just received some this week, and I'm not sure if Jonathan published those yet, but I'll make sure he does.
I have not. I honestly do not understand your website, to be honest. I'm having a very difficult time finding anything, so if they are published, could someone please send me a link because I struggle. I
Yeah,
really
these tests,
struggle.
those results are published on the state website, so they're all consistent with the rest of the state. All the schools are being tested. So I'll make sure you get that link to the state's website.
I appreciate that. I agree with Tim Farrell. I mean, the numbers are so scary coming at us, but you know, if things need to be addressed for safety and health purposes, it need be. But you know, if something like pipes that have lead in them are going to be detrimental to the health and well-being of the students and the employees within, I mean, this is something that has to be addressed. And I just learned about this within the last couple months, and I imagine most of the residents in this town have no idea of what is even, happening. And this is something that can't go on. So I just wanted to know if this was something that needed to go on to that bond or not. So thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you.
Michelle? Is she still on?
Yes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yay!
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you so much. So I'm there's a couple things. One, I just have to I really love all of you, but I'm really frustrated because I'm not getting answers to my emails. I'm not getting phone calls returned, and it's really disappointing to be ignored. And so please do better, because I think my questions are valid and they speak to the process. And I served on the board for a number of years. I also was appointed by you guys to be on this charter commission, and I had questions about the process, and nobody bothered to answer me. And then I sent another email. I didn't even get an acknowledgement that I sent an email. Okay. That's unacceptable. And what's really frustrating to me is when I was on the board, we sat and did, workshops about community engagement and how to get into, and how to communicate with the public. And if, I don't know. So I don't understand what's going on. So I just have to share that. And my question about the process. So last year I was on the charter committee, and one of the issues that I had was that the chair and the vice chair were already picked before the committee even met. And I found out last night that the chair and the vice chair were given charges to investigate, which I didn't know about, right? It was a really challenging committee to be on. The agendas were really confusing. They were late. The information, how you guys attach documents to agendas so people can look at things before you meet, so you know what you're meeting about. That never happened. Everything was on a Google Drive that I didn't have access to. So I had to read it in Zoom. And then we met in the middle of the week, in the middle of the day, and I work. And I asked over and over again if we could meet different times, and I was ignored. And I was paying people to be here to help me to do my job, and I had to leave for an hour and a half, and I just couldn't do it anymore. And I was treated very rudely. So I just need to share that out in the open. And so I quit. But I did, I was there until September, and they did present the changes in December of the year, that year. So that happened, and then I didn't hear anything else. I heard something about they wanted to wait until they got a new town manager, maybe to revisit it. But, you know, I was looking at the charter language, and it said that if items aren't presented after the charter commission is over and presents those changes to the boards, it has to be done the next Australian ballot, which when I was looking at everything and reading the directions, I would assume that would be March of 2023. So I was busy during Christmas, and I happened to glance at the agenda for the select board, and I was very surprised to see this had come up again. When I went to go find the information, because there was a screenshot of the vice chair's Google Drive with his notes on it, and I was like, I don't remember. I wonder if they approved that. You know, if the committee approved that language, or if this was something that the vice chair just gave to the board. So I went to go look for the information, and it wasn't on the town website. In fact, none of the meetings from the charter commission or agendas or minutes had been posted since June of 2022. So that confused me even more. And it seemed to be an open meeting violation. And so I, inquired with the town. They said, no, it was on the server. So I looked up open meeting law. It says that meeting minutes and agendas need to be posted on the town's website. So right now I'm trying to get the definition between website and server and what that, because that's what governance is about, those little, discrepancies. Anyway, I went to the meeting. I was shocked to hear, some of the proposals, but in any case, I was also baffled why, since this is the charter is both the town and the school, why both bodies didn't meet and have that presentation together as a joint, jointly. And then last night when I was listening to some of the changes that they were trying to add back, they're being taken out. Some of them did, because I sat in those meetings, some of them did affect the school. And so I raised my hand and I said, well, I thought in our charter that, I'll read it right here. The town and school district shall have and enjoy the rights, immunities, powers, and privileges conferred by the Constitution and laws of the state of Vermont, and shall also have all implied necessary incidental powers for the discharge of their respective purposes. And so in this chapter, I'll just skip C and go to E. In this chapter, no mention of a particular power shall be construed to be exclusive or to restrict the scope of the powers that the town or school district would have in particular power were not mentioned. The select board and the school board shall operate as separate and independent entities. Nothing in this chapter shall be interpreted as allowing either one to exercise, inhibit, or infringe upon the rights, powers, and privileges of the other. And so, the way I interpret it is that the select board was making all the decisions and they were coming back to you guys telling them what was happening. And, when I was on the board, I was told, no, we're equal governing bodies. And when I brought that up with Mike, he said, no, that the select board has the ultimate authority over the charter. So I tried to ask that question today and I couldn't get any answers. I know it's a lot of, roundabout way. And Allie did email me back and said, this is what Mike stated last night: a proposal to adopt, repeal, or amend a municipal charter may be made by the legislative body of the municipality or by a petition of 5% of the voters. So what he said last night was that that the select board is the legislative body. And therefore they, according to 17 V.S.A. 2645, they have the last say. So I'm just wondering if somebody can clarify that for me, because I'm really confused.
Tim Farrell, in the audience, and he was a member of the original Charter Commission.
Michelle, I hear your concerns around process and being engaged and being included, and I share those. As it relates to the charter, the language you just read speaks very well to how this actually plays out, because the school district is subject to different exclusive statute in the state from the town. They're actually by design, as Peter was kind of articulating around the fiscal thing. Yes, they should work together and are trying to work together, but in terms of what they're subject to two very distinct and different statutes in the state on how they operate. So I understand the frustration of, the not engaging the community at large, but on some level, the school and the town are handcuffed by that provision, which effectively, the word exclusive is important in what you read, because it does mean that they are kind of separate as to what they need to answer to. I hope that helps you with that.
Well, it does help me, but I got the impression last night, maybe you were there, maybe you got a different impression and are interpreting differently, but I got the impression that we weren't I keep thinking I'm on the board. Sorry, guys. Hold that forever. That the authority of the select board supersedes the authority of the school board. That's the interpretation I got last night.
Right. So the authority of the town with respect to town issues supersedes the school board, because we don't play in that field, and vice versa. If the intention was to make it appear that the town somehow could unilaterally make changes that affected the school district, that's incorrect. But fortunately, no matter what their belief may or may not be, and I will not, since I wasn't there, attribute any belief to anybody, nothing that happened this time around has affected the school board adversely, because those changes that we had a problem with, they responded to and corrected.
Okay. All right. Well, anyway, that's not the impression I got last night from listening, from asking those questions. And, so again, what I know that things changed, and I didn't, I had to go feed my dogs. They were howling at 10 o'clock. But what FX got on, and he read like at least 6 items that were removed from the, that were included in the original presentation that were removed. And I would imagine you guys both worked on that, but he was asking to put those back. And there were some that did involve the school. And so that's why I asked that question. And I asked if any, and so it looks like you guys are working, like not in meetings, talking to each other outside of the meetings to discuss this. That's what it looks like.
Can I ask a procedural question? So I felt like from what she read, that the legislative body had to take up the charter, and once they took it up, they could ask us for our opinion. Am I hearing that incorrectly?
I'm not entirely sure, having heard it, not seeing it because I'm a visual person, and not having the context for the rest of the document. exactly what it means. But my take on it basically was it basically said the school is responsible for the school stuff, the town is responsible for the town stuff, where they can work cooperatively, do so, but neither can unilaterally change, override the other.
And those changes
That's
were
exact.
given to us in open meeting, Michelle, the first meeting in January, I think.
No. I know he did.
Okay.
But last night it was just interesting because the charter language is a kind of different from this state language, the V.S.A. And so that's the one that you just read off. So what, which does a state supersede the charter? That's what I'm trying to figure out. And you know what? And I know you guys have a lot to do. I can write this up again and email it to you guys. Hopefully somebody will answer me and research it and get back to me because I just really like to know.
Nancy?
Yes, I will take care of that, Michelle.
All right.
Nancy?
This is Nancy.
Hey, Nance.
Okay.
Okay.
Send it to me and I'll find out for you, okay?
Okay. And I just wanted to say also too, I think I'm a little concerned about property taxes, and even though I get the income sensitivity, it still makes me a little nervous about the two budgets. But I also strongly, I feel the school, we need to have a safe school. We need to fix those roofs. We need to take out, a bond and get that stuff done because it's only going to cost more down the road. I know that because I have a 6-story tree in my backyard. And if I had taken it down like 6 years ago, it would have cost me $8,000. And it's up to 14. So I support the bond. So thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Nancy?
Yes, sir.
I think we're at a point as far as the charter goes.
Right, yes.
If there are any other additions or changes that were made after our last agreement, we need to have those reviewed by our attorney for the district to see if they are consistent with the direction that we've asked him to review the last batch.
We've had our attorney look at the charter changes and he said they're okay.
Right.
But that's not as of last night, Tom. That's what I'm getting at. It sounds like they made more changes. That's the problem. If that's my point, I should say, not a problem. If the town did make changes to the document that you submitted to our attorney, we have to have those looked at as well, is my point.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, and I'll take a look at that also in the morning and then I'll get back to the rest of the board if there was any other changes that were made since our attorney has looked at them. Is that okay with the board?
Right.
Okay.
We're just gonna have to move very, very, very quickly.
Do it.
Yeah. To get it.
Yep, I know.
Which he did. We made a request, Tom submitted the request for the charter review, and within 24 hours, we had a response.
Right.
So I'm not concerned about that. I just want to make sure that,
Okay.
we didn't miss something.
Okay.
The warnings that I was going to ask the board to sign tonight include the changes to the charter. So that will, would it be acceptable to us to accept the charter subject to the review, assuming that no significant things actually happened, our acceptance to go through? If it turns out that there were
significant changes, we'll have an emergency meeting.
Is that,
Does that work for you, Ms. Couch?
That makes sense.
okay,
We'll have to do it last minute and get it
Yeah.
done so you can make your
Deadline.
deadline.
we'll know by tomorrow.
I mean, the same attorney did help me with the warning, so, you know,
Right.
he's aware of what's there. Same attorney that reviewed the charter,
Okay,
did the warnings, so.
And that's why he's so expeditious about the timing,
okay,
because he understands the time constraint.
So in addition to the warning for town meeting and the budget and the bond, the board needs to approve two other documents that coincide with that. One's called a certificate of posting.
Mhm.
So that will be like where the warnings are posted and when in town, and when they're posted in the Valley News, as well as a resolution certificate, which is basically saying that the bond is necessary, you know, authorizing the voters to, or asking the voters to authorize the borrowing, and that we will pay it back. So in addition to those, there's several places we're gonna ask the board to sign right now, just so we can get that done.
So
I don't know if you want to sign that right now or wait till the end of the meeting.
let's do the language to say that we approve going forward with it, and
then sign that.
and then we'll sign it right at the end of the meeting, so we can, don't interrupt things
We
further.
can
Don't
keep
wait.
going here.
Yes, so I would move that we approve the annual meeting warnings and related documents, subject to confirmation from our attorney that there are no substantive changes that have been made to the document since it was last reviewed.
Do I have a second?
Second,
I actually have a clarifying question. You said the warnings, and I wasn't clear whether we were doing one separate for the charter and then adopting the warnings, or if those could be.
I was just gonna do them as a
Okay.
package.
Just want to make sure.
Yep.
Then-
They are all baked together in
Yeah.
the actual document. It's all in your packet.
Yes.
So we have a motion and a second, all approved?
Aye.
aye.
Okay, unanimous, thank you. Public comment, did I miss something?
Board committee reports.
Get two more.
I would really like to suggest, because of the time issue, that we hold off on the
That's
board
fine
committee
with me, I have
reports.
nothing to report anyway.
Okay, Tim. Thank you.
I'm getting up one more time and I promise I'll go home to my wife. So in your packet, and again, I want to apologize, like I am impressed with the fact that, Tom, thank you. In your meetings, all your materials are in there, easy to read. I encourage the public to go on the website. I actually think your website has a slight edge on the town website in terms of finding things, but seriously, like,
Here's an update, but
it is important, and I encourage all citizens out there that are listening to dive into these websites. There is a ton of information on them. And no, it's not perfect, but it's better than nothing. So the letter today from Emily Kornheiser, I hope I pronounced her name right, and Ann Cummings, Chair of Ways and Means and Finance, was made me feel better about myself, because for at least 8 years, I've been stressing the importance of the state funding problem. This is kind of the definition of insanity to me. And again, I was in the trenches doing this work that you guys are doing now. We have a huge disconnect between the state and local communities on wrestling with this issue. I was trying to come up with some strategies where we could at least start the conversation. I would encourage the school district to consider a community forum with the legislatures that we have in our town, and really do a deeper dive into this issue. I think it's a failed policy. I really do, Act 60, and I love education and I love learning in public schools. But I really believe the funding policy and the way we have it structured in the state of Vermont is seriously flawed. It pits communities with communities. It creates this disconnect with the reality on the ground with Montpelier. And I just think that we have to have move the ball on this this year, have the conversation. And I'm happy to bring coffee if we want to do it all together. So I'm being serious about this, and I really am passionate about trying to correct it. I think it's incredibly stressful, as you guys now know. And somehow I think as a small state with 83,000 students, we can find our way back and do a better job. So if we can schedule that in the next year, I know that doesn't help us this year, I would be happy to be part of that process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a quick comment to Tim's request. The two chairs of the money committees that are responsible for the taxing are scheduling a public hearing for tomorrow. So anyone that's available that feels that, you know, they're willing to jump into that deeper end of the pool are welcome, because it's fully public and open.
Is that the one that's at 1 o'clock, Coach?
Yes, and that's what it's intended to do because of exactly this problem.
Right.
It's in Montpelier.
It's in Montpelier. Okay.
But it's going to be live as well, or virtual, I should say.
Yeah. No, I haven't. I think to Tim's point, he was speaking to us as a community, talking about our representatives.
It's your turn.
Do we have any other public comments? Nicole?
That's right.
But I know you guys know who I am. But my name is Nicole Bailey, and I am the president of the Hartford Education Association, the teachers union here in Hartford. And I'm gonna read a letter that we've drafted, and we'll send it to you later. And we sent it to your chair, secretary, because we'd like it to be entered into the record right now. So the Hartford Education Association meets monthly with teachers and support staff to discuss the state of our buildings, to identify issues, and to problem solve ways to support one another in our collective work. This year, our members are reporting higher levels of frustration, worry, and discontent than ever before. We pride ourselves on being a cohesive and a solutions-oriented group of people, and rarely reach out to you to voice our concerns. We do so now because we have exhausted our other options, and because we feel the issues at hand require immediate attention. We're here because there are several long-running obstacles that are negatively impacting our whole staff morale, and thereby affecting not just our staff, but our students and the community. We would like to elaborate on some of the specific challenges so that you have some insight into what we are experiencing, and seek your collaboration to ensure that we can return to being stable and healthy workforce. So the first issue is understaffing, and also a lack of ability to attract new hires. So we have historically never had a problem attracting new teachers, new special educators, or substitutes, and this is just no longer the case. The Hartford School District currently has an entire page of unfilled professional and support staff positions. Some of these positions have remained vacant since 2022. Principals report very few, if any, applicants when they used to get close to 100. We are interested in working with you all to find ways to attract new applicants and to ensure that we can keep the quality educators that we have. And this work really needs to happen now. Likely related to this applicant situation, we're also struggling to maintain a manageable workload for the current staff. In the special education department, special educators are being asked to take on extra work from at least 6 vacant special education positions. Some professionals are holding nearly twice the caseloads of their counterparts in other buildings and programs in our district, and these are federally mandated services. Professionals are adding services to schedules until every moment of their day is filled with service time, leaving no time for reflection, consultation, research, and planning that makes for quality teaching, intervention, and assessment. Other team members are picking up overflow in an attempt to support their colleagues or to cover until a vacant position is filled. But this quickly becomes an impossible juggling act where the workload continues to increase and there's no relief. The vacancies remain unfilled, and not only does this negatively impact the health and stress levels of our educators, but it decreases the caliber of consistent instruction to our most vulnerable learners. Our facilities and maintenance department is also understaffed. Administrators have struggled to hire custodians over the last few years, and we're short many night custodians at several buildings. Our current custodians are working overtime to keep up, and they're overworked, and they're doing a great job. This model is not sustainable. If Hartford is unable to hire for this critical piece of our infrastructure, this will continue to be a health and safety concern for staff and students. The second issue I want to bring up is more initiatives and even less time. So with a higher than normal rate of mid-year resignations, coupled with a lack of hiring, administrators are now merging classrooms and caseloads, placing more and more students together and creating heavier workloads for an already stressed teaching staff. With more students, new curriculum, new initiatives, new mandates, and new agendas being added daily, combined with rapidly increasing numbers of dysregulated behaviors, classroom teachers find themselves with even less time to prepare, collaborate, and work in a self-directed manner. The special education department worked to replace classroom paraprofessionals with special educators, but now that we are short-staffed in special education, classroom paraprofessionals are needed even more than before. We were excited when we added nearly a handful of early release days to alleviate some of the pressure at the pre-K through 8 levels. Yet every minute of this time has been mandated and planned for us by the administrators at the majority of our buildings. There's almost zero consideration for the amount of work it now takes to run a classroom, implement district mandated curricula, communicate with parents, manage behavior, assess and collaborate with team members. At the pre-K through 5 level, teachers are expected to do all of this in a 45-minute prep block for more than 5 different subjects, in addition to supervision duties, parent communication, professional obligations, or even to just use the restroom. And I would add that we have one of the most complicated ELA curriculums that there is to use. And that alone could take 45 minutes or more. At all levels, teachers are burning out at a high rate and they're leaving the district. People are retiring early, who we'd like to keep. Some are leaving mid-year, and others are just looking for jobs elsewhere. It's an employee's market, and there are more appealing and less stressful jobs available with similar pay. Substantial measures are needed now to ensure we maintain our current staff, but also have the ability to attract quality new people. We believe that Hartford can recover its reputation for being a district in which people want to work, but we need to demonstrate progressive and immediate measures to attract and retain high-quality staff members. We don't know the answers to what this is, but it's time to think about all the ways Hartford could do this. Salary increases, retention incentives, increased paraprofessional support, incentives to delay retirement, as well as out-of-the-box benefits, such as those we talked about during labor management when we had that. We talked about an in-house childcare or subsidized childcare in exchange for years of service. Think of the young staff we would attract and keep with this perk alone. We are interested in working together to make things happen before we lose more staff than we already have. And I would add to that, we have lost staff due to childcare issues. So the third issue is lack of substitutes. Experienced this myself today. I was a first grade teacher, I'm a little rusty, but I did it. I'm not usually a first grade teacher. In the post-COVID era, fewer people are coming to work sick, as we would hope. This contributes to chronic understaffing and increases the amount of stress-related illness. As a result, teachers are being asked and told to double up classrooms, function as substitutes, and more. There is little sense of a regular day, and some buildings report being in crisis mode constantly. At the elementary level, teachers have been asked to take on double the number of students or cancel special education and intervention services to cover for others who are absent. At the middle and high school levels, teachers have been asked to split up student groups to supervise more students, also increasing student numbers. Other professionals are expected to fill in daily, frequently taking away time and focus from what their actual jobs are. Other times, classes are moved to larger common areas so that they can be supervised more easily by fewer staff members. All of this negatively impacts student programming, the continuity of instruction for students, and interpersonal relationships between staff members. It's leading to more stress, more job dissatisfaction, and more absenteeism. Each building seems to handle the lack of substitutes differently, despite having clear language in our shared CBA for how substituting should be handled. And then there's some language there. However, there does not appear to be a system in place at each building. Rather, administrators repeatedly ask staff to provide coverage or substitute. Staff who have opted out have reported being badgered or made to feel guilty by administrators, while told to also be a team player. One teacher was called disrespectful by an administrator for saying she wasn't comfortable taking on double the amount of students. The lack of substitutes is a known issue that can be solved with creative hiring in some way, better pay, better benefits. But for example, to become a substitute, one must pay for their own fingerprints to be done. So you've already taken a hit in your pay for that first day. Not having enough substitutes happens so frequently now, it isn't even an emergency. It's expected daily. The responsibilities therein should not fall to current staff members. We are interested in contributing to a plan that would institute a more equitable protocol for how and when staff are asked to provide coverage. And we feel strongly that staff should have the right to say no to providing substitute services without retribution. When we brought this concern to Mr. DeBalzi, we were reminded that the HEA and the principal must, or the school district, the principal must do what's necessary to secure coverage for students. This is true, but what is being done to secure more substitutes? Further, adding to the strain of last-minute substituting, staff members who have provided coverage are reporting they're not receiving compensation or are unclear about the process of how to remit evidence to receive compensation. Without a clearly stated process for the entire district, buildings have patched together systems with mixed success for compensation. This risks not only missed pay for staff who have opted in to substitute, but endangers their future willingness to offer their support. The next issue are issues at the middle school. HMMS remains in a crisis mode and too often must react to student behaviors and the crises of the day, rather than proactively and positively supporting students. While you heard a small representation of parents at a recent board meeting, we can assure you that there are plenty more teachers and more students who have experienced bullying, harassment, and sexual harassment who have yet to make their experiences public. Middle school staff have reported feeling unsafe while at work and avoid the hallways due to highly sexualized student behavior, inappropriate language, including the frequent use of the N-word, sexually explicit words, and just a general sense of harassment. This includes student-to-student behavior and student-to-staff behavior. Students frequently swear at teachers and peers and put their hands on other students. HMMS had a single support staff member tasked with supporting the student behavior for the entire building for a long time. 2 years ago, teachers at the middle school sought help from the union. The union enlisted Vermont NEA's help with these building-based challenges, which resulted in a listening tour in the spring of 2023. When the tour was complete, the HEA asked to share the report with Mr. DeBalzi, who, when given the results of our tour, assured the HEA that the anticipated change in administration would lead to positive changes in climate, safety, and administrative effectiveness, in turn addressing many of the listed concerns. So before the start of the 23-24 school year, a group of teachers and union representatives met with then interim principal Justin Bouvier, and we generated a list of action items addressing the concerns raised during the listening tour and a subsequent meeting with Mr. DeBalzi. In October of 2023, 5 months after the meeting between Mr. Bouvier, Mr. DeBalzi, and the HEA representatives was requested, the group met to discuss the list of requested changes for acceptable workplace safety and satisfaction. And to date, no obvious action items have been taken from the mutually created list of concerns. Further, Justin Bouvier's resignation left another unfilled gap, which necessitated bringing in administrators from other district buildings and programs to supplement Ms. Hisman's presence. This inconsistency contributes to further negative impacts on the safety and morale of teachers and staff, teachers and students at HMMS, and also in the buildings where the administrators were pulled from. Students have still not been formally introduced to any of the administrators who have graciously agreed to fill in. This lack of familiarity has caused students to believe they don't have to listen to these adults. Recently, the 2 administrative positions have been filled. A dean of students filled with an in-house candidate, leaves another hole, much needed classroom counselor, and a new interim principal who will begin on February 5th. One of the issues HMMS teachers have reported is a divide amongst the staff concerning the handling of antisocial student behavior. Without clear leadership and definitive messaging, staff are not able to present a united front on what behaviors are expected, what behaviors are unexpected, and the students have taken advantage of that confusion. Staff members have asked for a behavior matrix to be created, agreed upon, enforced, and backed by a behavioral data tracking system. So the matrix is in the works, but the data tracking system is not. Some staff report feeling hopeful that interim vice principal Sarah Hisman is hearing their pleas for behavior support, though they are still awaiting action from the administrative team. So our concern for an additional superintendent, the AGA is grateful to Mr. DeBalsi's years of service, including his leading staff through turbulent times of a complete shutdown. He was instrumental in the return to normalization when we returned to campus, and he has stated that he puts the needs of students and community first. And as such, we believe that a year of overlap with his successor is an unnecessary expense the district should not take on when there are more critical needs for our financial focus. And in a time when additional teaching staff and support staff are in dire need, we believe the amount of money invested to complete this process is exorbitant. A salary of a second superintendent could potentially pay for up to 7 support staff members or support staff teachers, all of which would have an immediate positive effect on day-to-day operations. Our district faces large expenses to make basic repairs to our aging buildings and infrastructure for responsible, non-hazardous operation, and we need to make our campus more attractive and purposeful. In a session when Hartford taxpayers must be asked to back a multi-million-dollar bond to bring buildings and grounds up to regulation compliant status, this is not the time to be fiscally frivolous. We acknowledge and appreciate all Mr. DeBalsi has done for our district, and we also recognize that when we bring on a new superintendent, we bring them with the hope that they provide a new perspective, a renewed sense of energy, and a diverse set of experiences and ideas, and fresh eyes to our current procedures without the direct influence of previous tenure. With so many different buildings and programs, an effective superintendent should be a clear communicator and a forward thinker. We believe that having 2 will send a message of non-competence to the community regarding the new hire and would cause confusion among administration and staff as to whose directives and precedents should be followed. With a year of overlap, we are concerned that Hartford will not fully benefit from the fresh slate it would otherwise be offered. And we thank you for your time. The AGA is filled with teachers and support staff who all care deeply about our community, our students, and our reputation. We strongly believe that Hartford can rebuild our reputation as an attractive employer, but only if we have your support and your willingness to address these issues head on and in a timely manner. And we thank you for your time.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you.
Want me to give you a copy? I can email it to you guys.
That'd be fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. And thank you.
Do we have any further comments?
Does anybody else want to say anything? I said it all.
Is there any further comments at all? Okay.
Like to move, are there any appointments or things?
Yes. Couple sets of minutes from the 10th, the 16th, and the 18th.
Right,
Lanny St. Clair, special educator at OQS, and Lauren Estenhart, special educator at Dothan School.
Appointments.
Okay, I missed that, sorry. All right. I'd like to move that we accept the consent agenda, welcoming the new members of the Hartford School District community.
second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so moved, thank you. Our next board meeting is the 14th. So everybody bring your red hot.
Nothing like a Valentine's Day.
And we'll enjoy that evening. Meeting evaluation, would you like to do it, please?
We'll get it out of the way.
Here, Todd. Uh-oh.
So, 126. So the board was prepared for the meeting, satisfactory. The board's time was spent on ends not meets, satisfactory. Each board member was given opportunity to participate, satisfactory. The board treated all persons with courtesy and fairness, satisfactory. The board adhered to Robert's rules of order as necessary. The board adhered to its adopted governance style, and it emphasized outward vision and encouraged diversity in viewpoints. It exercised strategic leadership, not administrative detail. It maintained the distinction between board and staff roles that use collective decision-making. It looked to the future. Satisfactory. With that, I move that we adjourn.
So moved. So we are adjourned, right? Are we off?
Yeah.
No, I.
Good night, all.